What's up, YouTube? Coming back. I know I promised you guys in my last video that I'd make another video this week. Like I said, I'm still posting on my social medias, like my shorts, my TikToks, all that. I just have, I haven't really had crazy, I guess I've had time, not gonna lie to you, but I haven't been as motivated as I was with the whole like talking in front of a camera. That part's fine, but the whole like motivation to sit here and film a video, I've been more motivated on like the, because social media is they push out, like they push reels a lot more nowadays than they do anything else. So that's what I've been pretty motivated on doing over the last couple of weeks, was the more like short form content. But I saw this video today and I wanted to give my opinion on it. This dude that I've been following for a while on TikTok, I forget his name, but it's some older black gentleman, and he just sits in his car or in a park, and he just talks about his experiences and like real shit in life, and like the reality of a lot of people's life, even if they don't want to accept it. And I saw a video today, and I wanted to give my perspective, and it was about not everybody is meant to be successful or be a winner. And I think that's a big thing nowadays, because everybody, and that comes a lot of that comes from comparison, comparing yourselves to things you see online and people you see online and things that you want to be like. But in reality, if, that's just not the case, that's just not, that's a utopian thought process. And Lord knows we don't live in a utopian society whatsoever. But I wanted to get my take on that. It's like, I feel like that idea that like you can be a winner if you really try hard enough. Yes, you can, obviously, but I think that was told, like that was like imprinted in our minds from childhood. We're told, if you work hard, you believe in yourself, you never give up, then one day you will win, you will be successful. And it's a beautiful story to tell kids because it makes them motivated and it gives them something to strive for. But the problem is that it doesn't really work out that way. For every champion, there are thousands who never could ever stand on that podium. For every billionaire, there are millions who will never even come close. Not even billionaire, millionaire. For every millionaire there is in this world, there are millions of others that would never even come remotely close to getting to that level. For every famous actor, athlete, entrepreneur, influencer, there are talented people who work just as hard and never got the same outcome. And because we're built on a culture obsessed with winning. We celebrate the people at the top while ignoring everybody else. And one of the leading factors into this is social media. Every day you're shown the highlights of someone else's life. The business that exploded overnight, a trader who turned $1,000 into $100,000. I had that issue when I first started trading. I was comparing myself to all these big time guys who, looking at it now in reality and looking at and knowing trading more, a lot of that was bullshit. A lot of these fucking big guys are bullshit. They're bullshitting most of the time. But I always compared myself to these people and was like, I'm not there yet. Like, I'm obviously doing something wrong. But when I sat back and really looked at it, these guys didn't start yesterday. I thought it was like I could get rich in a month, 2 months, 3 months. I've been at this trading shit for almost 5 years now, and I've only 5 years like in the whole scheme of trading, but at least day trading, I've been at this day trading thing for 2.5 years now, and I've only started to see actual progress over these last 3-4 months probably. Like I said, I passed my funded account, the evaluation last week or 2 weeks ago. So I really only started seeing progress recently, and a big reason why I think that I was always falling back and failing was because I was comparing myself to these winners that I saw online. And I was a part of the millions of people who tried and failed. The people who gave everything and still didn't make it. The people who never got their lucky break in life, or who were talented but born into a terrible circumstance. There's probably there's thousands of athletes I'll just say in the country, in the U.S., that have more talent than probably some people who have professional contracts, and were just put in these terrible situations and just never had that success, never saw themselves become a winner. And the uncomfortable truth is that life isn't like perfectly fair, like whatsoever. Some people start 10 steps ahead. Some people are born with advantages they'll never fully understand. Others spend their entire lives trying to catch up. That doesn't mean effort doesn't matter. It definitely does, but effort alone doesn't guarantee victory. And accepting that reality can actually be freeing. I before I moved out to Italy and saw more of the world and saw different perspectives and different looks on the world, I always had like this thought that, if I just if I just put all my effort into one or two certain things, like if I don't succeed at that, I'm a failure and I'm not gonna do shit in my life. And being out here has made me realize that like all those materialistic, all that bullshit that comes in life with having the success and having the money that comes with the success, I have kind of lost that desire to have any of that stuff. I just want to live a happy life. And I think a lot of people in the process of trying to become successful and win in certain aspects of their life, end up making themselves worse, mentally, physically, because they put all this strain on themselves and then it doesn't work out, and then they just stop trying. They fuck up one time, they fail one time, and they think that failing one time is going to be the ultimate like demise of their life, when in reality these people who have these lump sums of money in this world have probably failed more times than you can count. Not than you can count, but they've failed more times than you have fingers on your hands and toes on your feet, And I think that people get so caught up in trying to be successful in certain aspects that they lose the true meaning of life, and that is that I don't really know, like you can't really put a meaning on life because everyone's life is different. Everyone's meaning in life is going to be different depending on who you are and what you're doing in this and the situation that you're in. I have the ability to live out here and not really worry about expenses like that, and all that's done is just made me like, I just look at like what I want in the future and what I want to do, and that's just changed my entire viewpoint. It's just changed completely. Like I was saying, I want to see the beauty and the culture in this world that we live in, and I don't really care if you can't bring your money anywhere when you die. Your money doesn't do shit when you die besides get passed down, or if that, you can't bring your money into the afterlife. So why would you not, like, if I'm 80 years old and I am living in a regular, not 80 years old, if I'm 60 years old living in a regular rinky-dinky house with 2 bedrooms, and I have a wife and I have kids and grandkids, and they're off doing their own thing, and I don't have the same amount of money to my name, that would be a success to me, because that means that I lived a successful life in my viewpoint, because that means that I did everything that I wanted to do, that I didn't care about where my next dollar was going to come from, because I know that I was spending my current dollars on doing something that would make me happy. To me, being successful in life is growing up and being older, and when you're older, looking back and saying, I did everything that I wanted to do, and it doesn't really matter that I don't have that money anymore, because I used that money at the time to better myself. And I think a lot of people treat this whole aspect of like winning as like a competition. You measure your worth against strangers you see online. You stop believing that being average is some kind of failure. You know, you try to do something. You, like say like you try to make a business like a startup, right? You fail. What are you now? You're just a regular person who works a 9 to 5 job. You are like everybody else. You are like 99% of the other people on this planet. So if you think that you're a failure, then that means 8 billion other people are also failures as well, and that's just bullshit. You know, once you realize that life isn't a guaranteed path to greatness, you know, you stop living under the crushing pressure of needing to become extraordinary. You know, think about it. Most human history was built by ordinary people, not kings, not celebrities, not billionaires, ordinary working class people. People whose names nobody will ever remember outside of their family. People who raised families, built communities, worked difficult jobs, carried society on their back. You know, history will always remember the winners, but civilization was built by everybody else. And maybe that's why some people are unhappy today, because we've convinced ourselves that an ordinary life isn't enough. We think every hobby has to become a business, you know. Every passion has to become income. Every moment has to be productive, you know. I had this idea for this photography thing that I wanted to do. It was a little business thing, and I had this idea probably a month and a half ago, and I looked into it for a little bit. Now I did work on it, and I had a idea, I had a company name, I had a logo, I was building a website, and it was for photography because I thought that, you know, yeah, I love photography, and I really got into it like heavy since I came out here, but it was just basically a glorified hobby, you know. I lucked out in other things, like I said with the trading stuff, where like I didn't have to. Once I saw slight success and you know a difference in the movement of my trading life that I was living, you know, I just pursued that fully because I know that isn't really a hobby, you know. Photography is, unless you're signed to some company, or, you know, unless you have sponsors, all this and that, you know, it is just a glorified hobby, you know. And once I realized that, you know, I kind of stepped back from this whole website business idea that I was making, because I realized, you know, that not everything that you enjoy doing has to come with, you know, income. You know, just the ability to be happy doing something that you love to do is enough income for your mental, that you don't need anything else. You know, you don't need that stuff in your life, because, you know, you kind of, if you really love doing something. Sorry, I just had another thought in my head. I just blacked out for a second. My bad. But like, yeah, if you have a thought in your head and you really like doing something and you're doing that thing, you know, you don't have to get paid for it, because the pure like joy and pleasure that it brings you from doing it is enough payment. You know, every year, you know, we think that like every year has to be bigger than the last, that every moment has to be productive, but that is just all really realistically a trap. You know, what if the endless pursuit of more is the very thing stealing our happiness? You know, the philosopher Arthur, I wrote down this quote, but I couldn't butcher this guy's last name. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, I actually think I got that correct, once said that life swings between desire and boredom. We chase something, we finally get it, and then we immediately start chasing something else. And I think that, you know, the finish line keeps on moving. You know, the promotion becomes another promotion. The million becomes a second. The dream house becomes a bigger house. Never feels like enough, never feels like enough. You know, it really. That's why some of the most successful people on earth are still very miserable. You know, I say this a lot, you know. You see, like if you're depressed as shit and hate your life, and the next day you wake up and you have $1 million in your bank account, the odds are you're still going to be depressed as fuck and hate your life. One, because you have no idea what to do with that. And two, because everything that comes, if you don't have any friends, if you don't have any social life, if you don't have a love life, if you don't have shit going for you, and you just become wealthy out of nowhere, you know, everything that follows that wealth is most likely going to be fake. Fake friends, fake, a fake, somebody else. Like if you get a new girlfriend, and after you get all this money, there's a a more likely chance that she doesn't actually really like you for you. She likes you because you're fucking loaded, and that's the sad reality about being extremely wealthy. That a lot of the things that come from that, a lot of the things that come from being a winner and being successful is fake. It's fake gratitude. Because winning the game doesn't automatically bring peace. Peace comes from knowing which game is really worth playing. And maybe that's the lesson. Not everybody will be rich. Not everyone will be famous. Not everyone will leave a mark on history. But everyone gets to decide what success means to them. Maybe success is freedom. Maybe it's having time. Maybe it's spending your life with people you love, creating art, traveling. That's my thing out here that I've really got big into. I guess you could say photography is creating art, but traveling. If I have a list of like 10 different things that I like have to see in Europe, Asia before I go back home after college, and if I get to those things, like that would be a success, even though if it didn't bring me any money, so to say. That is success to me because I wanted to do this. I put my mind to it and I made sure that I did these things. And it is, maybe it's simply just being able to go to sleep at night without regretting the life that you're living. The world tells you that your value comes from being better than other people, but comparison is a game that never ends. There will never be someone richer. There will always be someone richer, stronger, smarter, better looking, more successful. And if your happiness depends on being ahead of everyone else, you'll spend your entire life running and you'll never arrive. So no, not everyone was meant to be a winner, at least not by society's definition. Not everyone gets a trophy. Not everybody reaches the top, becomes a legend. But that doesn't mean your life has less meaning. In fact, the moment you stop obsessing over becoming somebody, you finally get the chance to become yourself. And maybe that's the greatest victory of all. The world told us that winning meant standing above everybody else, but maybe winning was never about being the best. Maybe it was about becoming who you were meant to be.